Hello, music fans. You're watching What's New 2024 on Death by Unicorn. Forgive my voice, I have a bit of a cold. Maybe it's more relaxing today. It could be like ASMR or something. On this show, I'm going to talk about 6 new releases that came out in metal, rock, and prog over the past week or so. There's one on here that came out on May 3rd that I missed last time I made a video, so I'm going to include that today. And I'll talk about them in my order of preference, starting with The Tangent and their album To Follow Polaris. This is progressive rock. It's the 13th album from this group from the UK. And this one is different from the other albums by The Tangent because every part was played by band leader Andy Tillison. He even did all the artwork and production on this album. And I think he technically put it out under the name The Tangent for one rather than The Tangent, but it's under The Tangent on Spotify. There's some very nice jazzy moments, lots of long songs. It even contains an over 20-minute prog epic track on here. Check that out if that sounds appealing to you. And I'm going to put this in my very good tier. Unfortunately, there were no albums from this past week or so that I've got an excellent, near masterpiece, or masterpiece. So I've got some that I call very good, some I call good, and one that's in my average tier. Next up is Unleash the Archers with their album Phantoma. This is the 6th album by this band from Canada, and it's power metal with melodic death metal and heavy metal influences. I thought their last album was very good, and I think the vocalist Brittany Slays is a stellar female metal vocalist. She's among the best. So I was interested in hearing this. I really liked her vocal performance as well in the Star One album by Ariane Lucassen. Some of my favorite tracks on Phantoma by Unleash the Archers on first listen were The Collective and Green and Glass. Just excellent songs. The album has a nice mix of female clean vocals and the odd harsh male vocal done by the guitarist Grant Truesdell. Lots of really catchy hooks, anthemic songs, and cool guitar pyrotechnics from time to time. Like, not quite as guitar pyrotechnic as Dragon Force, but kind of going in that direction. Pretty cool album. Check it out if that sounds appealing to you. That's Unleash the Archers with Phantoma. Also in my very good tier. Now I want to talk about another one that I'm putting in my very good tier, which is Mandoki Soulmates and their album A Memory of Our Future. This is the 8th album by this multinational band, and it's prog rock with some jazz fusion influences, maybe some world music vibes. And this band features an all-star cast of band members, which includes the band leader Leslie Mandoki, Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull playing some mean flute on here, Al Di Meola, Simon Phillips, and more. The singles I heard ahead of time, they were well written and well played. The downside of this album is it does really sound like a bunch of old dudes playing jazzy prog rock. They play it pretty safe. They don't push the boundaries or really push the genre forward. But the songs are really nice. The sound and the production are nice too. It's just missing a little edge for me, so I probably won't go back to it much. But if it had a little bit more bite to it and a little bit more adventurousness, I think this band has potential to make some excellent stuff. Next, moving on to my good tier now, I want to talk about Agusa and their album Noir, which is an official soundtrack. It's the 6th album by this Swedish band. It's kind of instrumental, but it has some spoken word. It's progressive psychedelic space rock. It's got some stoner rock influences, I guess. I think if you're a fan of Jethro Tull, you'll like this album by Agusa because there's some flute and recorder on top of that typical prog rock band instruments. There's also a bit of a Middle Eastern vibe to some of the tracks on this one. And I think I like this a bit better than the last Agusa album, which is actually surprising because this is a soundtrack. And usually I don't like soundtracks as much as proper albums. I think I would like this a lot more if they added some great vocals to it. This is actually the soundtrack for the film Malmo Noir, which is directed by Augustin Sjoberg. I don't know how to pronounce his name. But the story behind this is the guitar player Michael works as a mailman, and one day he happened to be talking to his fellow worker who was making his own movie and needed some original music for the score. This was during the pandemic. Nothing much was happening for Agusa, so they followed with that idea and they made this soundtrack for this film. Pretty cool. Check it out if you like instrumental music. For me, it's just in my good tier. I'm biased against instrumental music and strongly prefer stuff with vocals. There's a few exceptions of some of my favorite instrumental bands. Like if you're going to be instrumental for me, I think there's got to be some pyrotechnics for me to be really into it. So I like my favorite instrumental bands are bands like Animals as Leaders and Intervals and Sean and Polyphia, and those are like pretty much it. Like I like some other ones, but those are like I think those are the four big ones. Like maybe I'm missing some, but there's some other great ones. But um, yeah, the instrumental stuff, it's really got to blow my mind for it to work for me. Otherwise, I kind of just wish there's vocals. Next up, the last one in my good tier for today is Knocked Loose with their album You Won't Go Before You're Supposed to. And this is the third album by this band from the US, and it's metalcore, leaning a bit more towards the hardcore punk side of metalcore. And this is the third album by this American band. I think I said that already. Um, the two early release singles I heard before the album came out were good. They were really hardcore and intense, dissonant music with those nasty panic chords played by the guitar, essentially all harsh scream vocals. One of the early singles had a guest spot from Poppy, and she does a great job with her harsh vocals too. All the vocals on here are just really harsh. They sound like the harsh vocals from the band The Devil Wears Prada. To me, that's kind of the most similar vocalist that I can think of in terms of harsh. I thought the snare sound was a little tinny, like a garbage can. It kind of reminded me of the snare in Saint Anger by Metallica. I'm not sure if that's just me, but it sounded a little weird. I think if you want music to mosh to, this is great. This is your album. It just goes hard. It's like it goes hard from beginning to end. I feel like it needs a bit more calmness to have some contrast because it's just a brutal assault the whole way through. But some people like that. So if you like that, then definitely check out this album, Knocked Loose, by Knocked Loose, called You Won't Go Before You're Supposed to. I think it's good, but I probably won't go back to it too much. If you want to mosh nonstop, this is your album. But there's definitely a risk of getting a headache if you listen to this from start to finish. It is very noisy, aggressive, hardcore, and dissonant the whole way through. And the last album that I want to talk about, I'm going to put in my average tier, which is a bit of a letdown because I thought the debut album by this artist was excellent in my excellent tier. That's Bill Fisher is the artist, and How to Think Like a Billionaire is the album. And this is the third solo album by this musician from the UK. The genre is hard to describe. He brands it as yacht doom, which I guess is pretty accurate. It's kind of like psychedelic rock with yacht rock and pop mixed in there, but also some stoner doom metal, bit of progressive rock, hard rock, and soul influences. Now, Bill Fisher's in a band called Church of the Cosmic Skull. I've never really listened to his band, actually. I just kind of stumbled upon his debut album from 2020, which I thought was excellent. But for some reason, I never listened to his second album from 2021 yet. But I did just listen to his third album. The early release single I heard from his third album was called Yell of the Ringman, and it was excellent. It had that stoner doom vibe to it. It had some cool riffing, so I was actually really looking forward to hearing this album. He brands this genre as yacht doom, so I guess it's kind of like a combination of yacht rock and doom metal. I can hear that, but unfortunately, I found all the other tracks on the album besides Yell of the Ringman just to be a little weak, boring. They were kind of like soft, easy listening and really average sounding. And I just didn't find them anywhere as good as the songs on his debut album. which is a disappointment for me because those songs on his debut album were excellent. The other songs on here on this Bill Fisher album just had a bit of a soul and a gospel music vibe to them for me. That was okay. Nothing on here is too bad, but just nothing on here is too exciting either. So I have to just put this in my average tier. Still worth a listen if you're interested, especially if the combination of yacht rock and doom metal sounds good to you. It's a pretty unique sound. I don't think you hear it too often, but proceed with a bit of caution. And know that one of the best tracks of the album comes later in the album. So it kind of starts off with a really big lull, and then when Yell of the Ringman comes along, there's like that one awesome song, and then the rest is kind of just meh, whatever. It's okay. And that's it for my first impressions of these 6 new albums that came out over the last, I don't know, 10 days or so. The Agusa one came out on May 3rd, but the rest came out on May 10th. Let me know what you thought of these albums by posting in the comments down below, and what else came out recently that you think I'd enjoy. And stay tuned for next time. Peace out. Hopefully my voice will sound better by the next time I make a video.